You see, we as human beings, we're so used to being in the lead, in a certain sense. I don't mean that everybody's listening as a leader in life or anything like that. That's not the kind of lead that I'm talking about. But in this kind of practice, we have to sort of get out of this certain sort of mind, this certain, not just a mind state, but a way of being, right? Where we're always um, it's very assertive. And I don't mean assertive in the normal way. I don't mean, we all know assertiveness in life and assertive people that will tell you what their opinion is very readily or what they want or whatever. There's that kind of assertiveness. But that's not exactly what I'm getting at. Internally, like we're oriented in this way where we're real problem solvers, especially in the West, man. We're taught to speak. What's your problem? Define your problem well, and then go about and find your solution, your problem, and fix it. And that works really good in some areas of life. That works just fine in some areas of life. In this particular area, that orientation, it will come upon its limitation, because we the ego are then too much, right? Too much in control, too much, I'm asking my questions and I'm going to come up with the answers and then I'm going to, and I'm going to, and I'm going to, and I'm going to. And there's very little like listening internally. Get out of the driver's seat for a moment. Get in the passenger seat, but pay attention so you can learn and watch. And at least open to the possibility that there's a domain of your psyche that's far, far, far more intelligent and loving and kind and ruthless, all of that, than the mind you're conscious of. It's something else that's very difficult to connect with as long as the ego's asserting, asserting, asserting. And again, we think we have our own images of an assertive ego, an overly assertive person. I think we've all encountered that. Maybe we've been that at times in our lives. But that sort of asserting ourselves internally, right? Not just externally, but, asserting ourselves. How do I control this? I have this feeling. I don't want that feeling. I'm that emotion. I don't want that feeling. I don't. Asserting, asserting, asserting. It's low level. It's subtle, right? But it's still, right, that little sort of imagined self in there, keeping itself right in the center. And so, okay, that happens. Fairly universal in the human experience. And so it's useful to acknowledge it. But also, I'm not saying we do the opposite. I'm not saying we go from this sort of very assertive problem solving, how do I do this kind of orientation, to something that's just sort of overtly like I do nothing. I'm not oriented really towards anything, really. I'm just completely passive. That doesn't really work that well either, right? Because we're often not engaged engaged in the sense of being conscious enough, right? We go, well, if we just go, well, it'll just happen when it happens and in the way that it happens, and I'm not going to push the current. I'm not going to do anything, which is really a way of saying I don't want to be disturbed. I don't want this thing to put me out of shape. I just want to go along my way and, things just That's not exactly what I'm talking about. So that's just the opposite of the overly assertive person. There's the underly assertive. Someone who's kind of, usurp their own agency in a sense in all this. And I think what makes some of these subtleties challenging is the very teachings that, like special non-dual teachings, right? Because somebody who's read a lot of that but doesn't actually understand it in their own experience deeply will go, well, who's going to do all that? And isn't that somebody? And isn't that, the doer? And isn't that, it all starts to sound like a philosophical argument, because it often kind of is. I mean, not that that's being, sometimes it's just kind of confusion in someone's own mind, but so it is best if we find just that place of integrity for each of us, a kind of balance. First, the balance, and stick with. Another thing that's hard to convey is how powerful it is to stick with the truth of one's experience, not to hold on to it or cling to it, but to, to stay right with what's unfolding, with experience. So there's a kind of a flow as we kind of just let go into this simplicity. And we can feel it inside. Literally, just kind of the the energy body, the emotional body. It can return a kind of flow to, because we often are so kind of constricted in a sense, right? A lifetime of collecting experiences, memories, ideas, hurts, defeats, all of that, like, kind of keeps that will, if we don't bring attention to that, if we don't bring consciousness or awareness to all that, that kind of impedes the flow, right? When we have an idea that's just in opposition to the way that life actually does move. That if we have an idea that's in opposition to the way life actually moves, we will feel some conflict with that. Right? And so even suffering itself is a real kind of pointer if we know how to use it. Right? If we start to suffer and we go, okay, that's something's not flowing. There's a conflict inside, often a conflict of in our own psyche, right? Something's not flowing. I'm moving in a way that's not in simple flowing accord with life. What is that? What is it that's getting in the way, that's causing disturbance, that's causing turbulence in this kind of, this flow? And again, which is a kind of more of a harmonious relationship with just the unfolding of moment to moment to moment life, a moment to moment existence. And so even suffering, or not even when it turns into so like overt suffering, but when you just feel that internal, when the flow, just there starts to be a disturbance in it, you can feel it, just something's not quite. That moment, those moments are often the moments where almost reflectively we'll double down on our conditioning, believe it or not. And not we won't be thinking, we won't be really conscious of this, but we'll feel that lack of flow or some discord, and we will our the conditioned tendency, and you'll feel it too. It's not just like a tendency makes it kind of too benign. You'll feel pulled by it, right? Pulled by it. The tendency is that that our conditioning just repeats itself and repeats itself and repeats itself and repeats itself. And so each of those, as it's repeating, our conditioning is repeating in our experience or in any given moment, we'll feel the discord at some level. It might be really low level, it might be quite high level, or mostly it's something in between. But those are like tip-offs. That's like a yellow light flashing that says, hey, look closely right here, right now at your relationship with this moment. What is your relationship with this moment? It could be the moment outside of you. It's the moment inside of you. It's the whole thing. What's your relationship with that moment? And often when there's some discord or whatever it is, our relationship with the moment will be some version of a no. For spiritual personalities, we won't necessarily say that to ourselves because it doesn't sound so spiritual. But nonetheless, resistance is another way of our body mind saying no to what is, right? No, I don't like that. No, I don't want it to be that way. Or just no, 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 no. That's what resistance is, right? And so we look at that. What is that no? Does that no serve me? Does it serve others? Does it serve some higher purpose? Or is it just a sort of conditioning, a piece of fear that was put in through life experience? And what if I started to look at that and just see that's not working for me too well? And it creates discord. So sensing our way intuitively, feeling your way through it, feeling your way through and into your own psyche, into your own depth.